The Forgotten Relic. Emerges Empire. The galaxy had forgotten the name Iron Fang. Once, it had been a symbol of human strength, a warship feared across the stars. Now, it was nothing more than a rusting relic, floating aimlessly in the scrapyards of Nova Prime. The ship's hull was scared from ancient battles, its weapons long silent. To most, it was just another outdated vessel, abandoned by time. The Galactic Council had declared it obsolete. Even the human fleet had stopped considering it useful. But war had a way of bringing the past back to life. A desperate summons. Deep in the darkness of space, a distress signal echoed. It came from the Eris colony, a small human settlement on the edge of the galaxy. The message was brief but chilling. Under attack. Zarnathi fleet inbound. No reinforcements. Mayday. The Zarnathi Dominion was ruthless. They had conquered dozens of planets, crushing civilizations that stood in their way. And now, they had turned their eyes toward human space. The Terran High Command received the message, but their forces were stretched thin. No warships were close enough to reach Eris colony in time. The only ship within range was the Iron Fang. A captain's burden. Captain Elias Grant stood before the massive warship, his gaze fixed on the rusted hull. He had heard the stories. The Iron Fang had been one of humanity's most advanced ships, once. But that was centuries ago. The Admiral's voice crackled over the comms. "Grant, we have no choice. Take the Iron Fang and stop the Zarnathi fleet. The colony won't survive without you." Grant sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. He wasn't a fool. Sending one old warship against an entire enemy fleet was suicide. But he also knew what would happen if he refused. The people of Eris colony would die. So he did the only thing he could. He saluted sharply. "Understood, sir. We'll make it count." The crew of the forgotten ship. Inside the Iron Fang, dust covered the control panels. The ship's corridors were dark, cold, and lifeless. Only a handful of crew members remained on board, engineers, technicians, and a few young officers who had never seen real combat. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, the ship's tactical officer, crossed her arms as she watched the captain inspect the bridge. "Sir, I hate to say it, but this ship, it's a floating graveyard. Our weapons are outdated, shields are unstable, the engines barely function." Grant gave her a tired smile. "Then we'll just have to make do." The crew worked quickly, repairing what they could. The ancient warship groaned to life, its systems flickering as power surged through its veins. The engines roared. The bridge lights flickered on. A deep, synthetic voice echoed through the speakers. "Systems online. This is AI Sentinel. Operational once more. Awaiting command." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "The ship still has a functioning eye." Grant smirked. Maybe this old beast still has some fight left in it. A laughing enemy. On the other side of space, the Zarnathi warlord, High Commander Vrogan, stood on the bridge of his massive flagship. His fleet had already surrounded Eris colony. The human settlers were weak, defenseless. A transmission came through. One of his officers sneered. "Commander, a single human warship is approaching." Vrogan laughed, his sharp teeth flinting. "One ship? Is this a joke?" The officer shook his head. "It is an old Terran battleship, sir. Designation: Iron Fang." Vrogan's laughter grew louder. "They send us a relic. Very well. Let this Iron Fang witness the destruction of its people before we turn it to dust." He had no idea what was coming. The awakening of a Titan. As the Iron Fang sped toward Eris colony, its systems slowly restored. Deep within the ship's archives, hidden protocols activated. The AI, Sentinel, analyzed the situation. Enemy fleet detected. Threat level: extreme. Grant clenched his fists. "We need a miracle." The ship rumbled as forgotten weapons came online. Energy surged through ancient conduits. Something powerful had been sleeping inside this vessel for centuries. Iron Fang was waking up. And it was angry. The laughing enemy. The Iron Fang surged forward, its engines roaring like a beast awakening from slumber. On the bridge, Captain Elias Grant stood with his hands gripping the control panel, staring at the distant planet of Eris Colony. Time was against them. If they didn't act fast, the colony would be reduced to ash. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes read out the latest scan results. Zarnathi fleet confirmed. 6 warships, heavily armed. Their flagship alone could destroy a planet. And, sir, they're already targeting the colony's surface. Grant exhaled sharply. How long until we're in weapons range? The AI, Sentinel, responded in its cold mechanical voice. 4 minutes. Enemy fleet has detected us. They are amused. Hayes scoffed. Of course they are. Mockery from the void. On board the Zarnathi flagship, High Commander Vrogan grinned as he watched the old Terran warship on his display. The Iron Fang looked like it belonged in a museum, not a battlefield. One of his officers turned to him. Shall we destroy them now, sir? Vrogan chuckled. No, let them come closer. I want to see how long they survive. Maybe I'll even let them beg. His fleet adjusted their formation, moving into an encirclement pattern, a tactic they had used to crush countless civilizations. The humans were nothing special, just another weak species trying to delay the inevitable. Vrogan activated the comms and spoke, his voice dripping with amusement. To the captain of the Terran relic, do you wish to surrender, or would you rather we scrape your remains from the void? Grant listened to the message but didn't respond. He simply turned to his crew. They think this ship is weak. Let's show them how wrong they are. A desperate gamble. Inside the Iron Fang, the crew scrambled to prepare for battle. Hayes checked the weapons system. Sir, we have railguns, missile launchers, and plasma cannons, but they're outdated. Against modern shields, they won't do much. Grant frowned. And the main cannon? Sentinel answered. The ship's primary weapon remains dormant. A full systems reboot may be required. Grant gritted his teeth. Time was not on their side. They had to act with what they had. Fine. We'll fight with whatever we've got. He turned to the helm officer. Full speed ahead. Target their flagship. The crew hesitated. Attacking the flagship first was suicide, but they saw the fire in their captain's eyes. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Aye, Captain. The Iron Fang charged forward, straight toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The battle begins. Vrogan's officers were shocked. Commander, they're heading straight for us. Vrogan smirked. Brave, but foolish. Fire at will. The Zarnathi warships opened fire. Plasma bolts and laser beams cut through space, aiming to tear the Iron Fang apart before it could even reach them. Inside the Terran warship, alarms blared as the shield struggled to hold. Sparks flew. Metal groaned under the pressure. Hayes yelled over the noise. Shields at 60%. We won't last long. Grant clenched his jaw. Return fire. Make them bleed. The Iron Fang's railguns roared, unleashing hypervelocity projectiles. Missiles launched, streaking through space like vengeful spirits. Plasma cannons fired, lighting up the battlefield. The first Zarnathi cruiser took a direct hit, its hull ripping apart in a fiery explosion. The bridge of the Iron Fang erupted in cheers. But the battle was far from over. A ship that refuses to die. Vrogan's smirk disappeared. He leaned forward, watching as his fleet's shots failed to cripple the Terran warship. How is that thing still moving? He growled. His officers panicked. Sir, it's taking heavy damage, but it's still coming. The Iron Fang was old. It was damaged, but it refused to die. On board, Grant wiped blood from his forehead as the ship shook violently. We need that main cannon online now. Sentinel finally responded. Primary weapon activation in progress. Grant smirked. Good. Let's give them something to really laugh about. The awakening of a beast. The Iron Fang shook violently as enemy plasma fire tore into its shields. Inside the bridge, sparks flew, and the dim emergency lighting cast eerie shadows over the crew. The air was thick with smoke, but Captain Elias Grant remained steady, gripping the railing as if sheer willpower alone could hold the ship together. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes wiped sweat from her forehead, her fingers dancing across the console. Shields at 30%. Hull integrity dropping. The enemy fleet continued their assault, their confidence growing. High Commander Vrogan watched the Terran relic struggle. Enough games. End this. His fleet adjusted their formation, preparing for the final blow. They were about to make history, the day the last of humanity's warships was erased from existence. But something stirred deep within the Iron Fang. A hidden power awakens. Down in the heart of the warship, where no human had ventured in centuries, something ancient began to activate. Systems long thought dead flickered back to life. Power conduits pulsed with renewed energy. Forgotten technology hummed with a dangerous glow. The ship's AI, Sentinel, spoke in a calm but ominous tone. Primary weapon activation at 80%. Initiating final phase. Grant narrowed his eyes. What final phase? Suddenly, the ship's lights surged to full brightness. Consoles that had been dark for decades lit up in rapid succession. The deep hum of the warship's reactor turned into a full-throated roar. Hayes gasped as new readings appeared on her screen. "Sir, I don't know what's happening, but power levels are increasing. By a lot." The entire ship trembled, but this time, it wasn't from enemy fire. It was waking up. Fear spreads through the enemy fleet. On the Zarnathi flagship, alarms blared as sensors detected a massive energy buildup from the Iron Fang. An officer turned to Vrogan, panic in his voice. "Commander, something's wrong. That ship, its power levels are off the charts." Vrogan's confident smirk faltered. "That's impossible. It's a dead relic." The officer gulped. "Not anymore." The Iron Fang suddenly stopped moving. It hovered in space, motionless, as if contemplating its next move. The Zarnathi fleet hesitated. For the first time, they weren't sure if they were the hunters or the prey. The final warning. Grant's fingers clenched into fists. "Sentinel, tell me what's going on." The AI responded. "Iron Fang's true systems have been restored. Classified weapons are now operational. Shall I proceed?" Hayes looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "Sir, this ship isn't what we thought it was." Grant took a deep breath. "Sentinel, show me what this ship can really do." The AI complied. Engaging primary weapon. Now. The Iron Fang's hull groaned as massive energy cannons unfolded from hidden compartments. The ship's engines flared with an intensity never seen before. Then, the ship spoke. A deep mechanical voice echoed through every enemy ship's communication system. "Warning. This is your ONOICHANC to surrender. Leave now, or be erased." For the first time, silence filled the battlefield. The shot that shook the galaxy. Vrogan's heart pounded. "Fire everything we have. Now." The Zarnathi fleet unleashed a storm of plasma and missiles, but it was too late. A blinding light erupted from the Iron Fang. A single, massive energy beam, pure destruction, tore through the void. It struck the nearest Zarnathi battleship, and in an instant, the ship was gone. Not destroyed. Not broken into pieces. Just gone. Vrogan's eyes widened in horror. What kind of weapon is this?" The remaining Zarnathi ships scrambled to retreat, their formations breaking apart. The terror was clear. Humanity's relic was not outdated. It was something far worse. It was a weapon of extinction. The unleashed fury. The battlefield fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the Zarnathi fleet trembled in fear. The Iron Fang, a so-called relic, had just erased one of their strongest warships with a single shot. On the bridge of the Terran warship, Captain Elias Grant watched the aftermath unfold. The glowing energy dissipated, leaving nothing where the enemy ship had once been. His crew sat frozen, stunned by the sheer power they had just unleashed. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes finally broke the silence. "Sir, that wasn't just a weapon. That was an extinction device." Grant finished, his voice heavy. He turned to the AI. "Sentinel, what did we just fire?" The mechanical voice responded calmly. "Primary weapon, gravimetric disruptor, designed for planetary-scale warfare. One shot can destabilize matter at the molecular level." Hayes paled. "You mean it doesn't just destroy, it erases?" The AI confirmed. "Affirmative." The enemies panic. On board the Zarnathi flagship, High Commander Vrogan struggled to comprehend what had just happened. One moment, his battleship stood strong. The next, it had vanished as if it had never existed. His officers panicked. "Commander, we need orders." Another officer stammered. "Sir, the humans never had weapons like this before. This is impossible." Vrogan clenched his fists. He had underestimated the Terrans. That ship, they had all thought it was outdated, a worthless relic, but it was something else entirely. It was a doomsday weapon. His rage boiled over. "I don't care what it is. Fire everything. Overload our cannons. I want that ship turned to dust." The Zarnathi fleet obeyed. Their warships unleashed a brutal storm of plasma, railgun slugs, and missiles, all targeting the Iron Fang. The storm against the Iron Fang. The enemy's firepower was overwhelming. The Iron Fang trembled as it was pounded by a relentless barrage. The shields flickered dangerously, sparks flying across the bridge. Hayes gritted her teeth. "Shields at 15%. We can't take much more of this." Grant gripped the console. They had power, but could they survive long enough to use it again? Then Sentinel spoke. "Captain, I suggest activating Phase 2. Grant blinked. "Phase 2. The AI replied coldly. "Full combat mode. Weapon systems at 100%. Defensive countermeasures online." Hayes looked at her monitor and gasped. "Sir, the ship is adapting." Before Grant could respond, the ship moved. A warship reborn. The Iron Fang, a ship that had barely been able to move before, suddenly accelerated. It weaved through enemy fire with unnatural precision. Plasma shots that should have hit missed by inches. The warship's hull seemed to shift, armor plates moving into a more defensive formation. And then it struck back. KRAKTHOOM. A second gravimetric blast erupted from the Iron Fang, tearing through space. Two enemy warships vanished in an instant, leaving only silence behind. Then the ship's automated turrets activated, rapid-firing advanced railguns with pinpoint accuracy. The Zarnathi warship shields collapsed under the onslaught. Their hulls cracked like fragile glass. Hayes was breathless. "It's fighting like it's alive." Sentinel responded. "Correct." The Iron Fang was not just a warship. It was a self-evolving combat platform, designed for total war. Grant exhaled sharply. No wonder they retired it. This ship isn't just dangerous. It's unstoppable. The enemy's last stand. Vrogan's fleet was in chaos. Ships were retreating in every direction. His officers shouted in terror. "We can't win this, Commander. That thing is hunting us down. We need to retreat. Now." Vrogan refused to accept it. His pride wouldn't allow him to. He slammed his fist against his console. "I am High Commander Vrogan. I will not ruin from a broken warship." His eyes locked onto Eris Colony. If he couldn't win, he would at least take the humans down with him. "Divert all fire to the colony. If I can't have victory, I will have their destruction." His remaining warships turned their cannons, aiming directly at the defenseless planet. The Iron Fang's final strike. On board the Iron Fang, alarms blared as Sentinel made a grim announcement. "Enemy fleet targeting civilian planet. Planetary bombardment imminent." Grant's stomach turned. The enemy was going to wipe out millions of innocent lives. He couldn't let that happen. Can we stop them? Sentinel's voice was sharp. Affirmative. One full power strike will eliminate remaining threats. However, this will disable the primary weapon temporarily. Grant clenched his fists. Do it. The ship roared as energy built up. The remaining Zarnathi warships prepared to fire on the colony. But they never got the chance. A third and final gravimetric blast erupted from the Iron Fang. The wave of destruction expanded outward, engulfing the entire enemy fleet. And then, silence. The Zarnathi fleet was no more. Victory. And a warning. The bridge of the Iron Fang was deathly quiet. The battle was over. The impossible had happened. A single ship, an obsolete relic, had destroyed an entire armada. Grant slumped into his chair, exhausted. Hayes turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. We won. Sir. The AI Sentinel spoke once more. Enemy presence eliminated. Human colony secured. Awaiting further orders. But Grant didn't celebrate. He simply stared at the wreckage, knowing what this meant. The galaxy had just witnessed something terrifying. The Iron Fang, a ship long thought dead, had returned. And now, everyone would know. Humanity's greatest weapon was never outdated. It was simply waiting. The planet killer. The battlefield was eerily silent. Where once an entire Zarnathi fleet had stood, only drifting wreckage remained. The Iron Fang hovered in the darkness of space, its weapons cooling, its energy reserves depleted, but victorious. On the bridge, Captain Elias Grant stared at the wreckage. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. They had won, but at what cost? This wasn't just a battle, it was a message. The galaxy had just witnessed something terrifying. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes finally broke the silence. Sir, what do we do now? Grant exhaled, pushing his exhaustion aside. Check on the colony. Make sure they're safe. Hayes nodded and turned to her console. Scanning now. Sir, Eris colony is intact. No damage. They're hailing us. A flickering holoscreen appeared, revealing Governor Lorian Vale. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock. Captain Grant, I don't know what to say. You saved us. You saved all of us. Grant gave a tired nod. We just did our job, Governor. But the governor's voice was hesitant. No, this was something more. That ship of yours, it didn't just fight. It erased an entire fleet. Asterisk asterisk, his voice dropped to a whisper. What have you unleashed? Asterisk asterisk. Grant had no answer. The terrifying truth. Deep within the ship, the AI Sentinel continued to process data. A strange energy pulsed through the core of the warship. Something ancient, something far beyond modern human technology. Hayes' voice pulled Grant from his thoughts. Sir, I ran a diagnostic on the Iron Fang. There's something you need to see. She brought up a screen, displaying classified data logs buried deep within the ship's system. Grant frowned. What am I looking at? Hayes swallowed. The Iron Fang wasn't just a warship. It was part of an abandoned project, Project Nemesis. The humans who built this ship, they weren't just making a battleship. They were creating a planet killer. Grant's stomach turned. Explain. She tapped the screen, revealing the hidden schematic. The gravimetric disruptor. It's not just a weapon. It was designed for planetary-scale warfare. If we fired it at full capacity, she hesitated before continuing, it could wipe out an entire planet. The words hit the bridge like a thunderclap. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Grant's voice was quiet but firm. Are you saying this ship could destroy worlds? Sentinel responded. Affirmative. The weapon was classified due to its destructive potential. The Iron Fang was decommissioned before it could be used in war. The room fell into heavy silence. The galaxy takes notice. Far beyond the battlefield, across the vast reaches of space, the destruction of the Zarnathi fleet did not go unnoticed. In the heart of the Galactic Council, representatives of countless species gathered, their faces filled with disbelief. A Harkari ambassador slammed his fist on the table. A single Terran ship wiped out an entire fleet. This is madness. A Vrathi delegate hissed. The humans were supposed to be weak. We thought their war era was over. The room erupted in chaos. Some called for war. Others called for peace. But all of them knew one thing: the balance of power had just shifted. For centuries, the galaxy had dismissed humanity. They had seen them as a species on the decline, their once great fleets now nothing more than museum relics. But now, they knew the truth. Humanity had not lost its power. It had simply hidden it away. And now, that power had returned. The enemy regroups. In the remains of Zarnathi space, the few surviving warships fled back to their homeworld. High Commander Vrogan's fleet was gone, but his people were not defeated. In the Grand War Chamber of the Zarnathi Dominion, Supreme Warlord Cypher listened to the reports. His clawed fingers tapped against his throne as he processed the news. A human warship, a single warship, had shattered one of his best fleets. His advisors shouted in rage. We must retaliate. The humans have broken the balance. We cannot allow this weapon to exist. But Cypher did not rage. He did not shout. Instead, he smiled. If the humans have unearthed an old monster, then we shall awaken our own. Across the stars, deep in hidden Zarnathi vaults, ancient warships powered up. Forgotten weapons of war, long buried, prepared to rise again. The Iron Fang had changed everything. And now, the galaxy would burn. A choice must be made. Back aboard the Iron Fang, Grant stood in the dimly lit bridge, staring at the vast emptiness of space. His mind raced with possibilities. They had a weapon that could turn the tide of war, a weapon that could make humanity untouchable. But at what cost? Hayes approached him cautiously. Sir, what do we do now? Grant closed his eyes for a moment before answering. We prepare, because this war is just beginning. To be continued. The end of a civilization. The Iron Fang drifted silently through space, its hull still glowing faintly from the devastating battle it had just won. The galaxy was in shock. One warship, thought to be obsolete, had single-handedly erased an entire Zarnathi fleet. But Captain Elias Grant knew that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The Zarnathi's last stand. Across the vast reaches of space, deep within Zarnathi territory, the Supreme Warlord Cypher stood in his darkened war chamber, his gaze locked on the holographic projections of his destroyed fleet. His claws tightened into fists. Unacceptable. His warlords stood behind him, their faces pale with rage and fear. One of them dared to speak. Supreme Warlord, we underestimated the Terrans. This Iron Fang, it is not just a ship. It is a nightmare given form. Another warlord spat. We should launch an immediate counterattack before they use it again. But Cypher remained still. His golden eyes burned with something colder than rage, calculation. No. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it silenced the room instantly. We will not strike in anger. We will strike with finality. He turned toward a massive vault door at the end of the chamber. For centuries, it had remained sealed. Inside, something ancient slumbered, something the Zarnathi had sworn never to use. The humans have unearthed their forgotten weapon. Cypher growled. Now we shall awaken ours. With a wave of his hand, the vault doors groaned open, and deep within, the Harbinger Protocol was activated. The Iron Fang's mission. Back on the bridge of the Iron Fang, the tension was thick. The weight of their recent victory was nothing compared to the burden they now carried. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes studied the latest intelligence reports. Sir, long-range scans have detected something. The Zarnathi homeworld is moving. Grant frowned. Moving? Hayes hesitated. Not the planet itself. Their entire fleet. We're detecting massive energy spikes. Something big is coming. Sentinel, The AI chimed in, analyzing Zarnathi data. Probability of superweapon activation, 94%. Grant exhaled sharply. He had expected retaliation, but this was something different. What kind of superweapon? Sentinel's response was chilling. Unknown. However, based on power readings, it is capable of mass-scale destruction, comparable to the Iron Fang. A heavy silence filled the bridge. Grant turned toward his crew, his expression grim. If they have a planet killer, we can't let them use it. Hayes swallowed. Sir, are you suggesting? Grant's voice was steady. We take the fight to them. Before they can strike first. The final assault. The decision was made. The Iron Fang would attack the Zarnathi homeworld before the warlords could unleash whatever weapon they were preparing. The ship's engines roared as they jumped into hyperspace, tearing through the void toward enemy territory. As they arrived, the sight before them was terrifying. The Zarnathi homeworld, Zurich Prime, was no longer just a planet. It was surrounded by an armada unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Gigantic capital ships, ancient war machines, and for the first time, the Harbinger-class dreadnoughts. Sentinel spoke. Warning, the Harbinger-class ships are equipped with gravimetric destabilizers. They are capable of planetary destruction. Grant clenched his jaw. Then we stopped them here. The Iron Fang surged forward, charging its weapons. The final battle had begun, a battle like no other. The Zarnathi fleet fired first. Massive energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and railgun barrages filled space, all converging on the lone Terran warship. The Iron Fang twisted through the chaos, dodging and weaving with impossible precision. Every enemy shot that should have hit missed by mere meters. Then it struck back. A single gravimetric disruptor blast erupted from the Iron Fang, obliterating 3 Zarnathi warships in an instant. The enemy panicked. That weapon again. We can't stop it. But Cypher watched from his command throne, unmoved. He leaned forward, his voice a low growl. Fire the Harbinger cannons. The Harbinger-class dreadnoughts adjusted their massive cannons and unleashed something humanity had never seen before. A black hole pulse. Space itself bent and twisted, pulling the Iron Fang toward oblivion. The crew screamed as their instruments went wild. Gravity itself was being torn apart. Grant held onto the railing, his face contorted in pain. Sentinel. Options. The AI responded. Countermeasures activating. A deep hum resonated through the Iron Fang as its last failsafe system came online. A phase distortion field, something not even Grant knew existed. The ship blinked out of reality for a fraction of a second. And when it reappeared, it was behind the Zarnathi dreadnoughts. The enemy commanders barely had time to react. Hobo. The Iron Fang fired everything. Gravimetric blasts, plasma barrages, railgun salvos. The Zarnathi fleet collapsed under the onslaught. One by one, their capital ships disintegrated. And finally, the Harbinger-class dreadnoughts, the last defense of Zurich Prime, fell. The end of Zurich Prime. High above the Zarnathi homeworld, Captain Grant faced the hardest decision of his life. The gravimetric disruptor was at full charge. One shot, and the planet below would cease to exist. Millions of Zarnathi lived on Zurich Prime. Some were warriors, some were civilians. Grant's crew waited for his order. Hayes swallowed hard. Sir, what do we do? A tense silence filled the bridge. The war would end today, but at what cost? Grant took a deep breath. His decision was final. He gave the order. Fire. The Iron Fang's primary cannon roared one last time. A wave of white-hot destruction surged downward, and Zurich Prime was no more. The aftermath. The war was over. The Zarnathi dominion had fallen. The Iron Fang, the ship they had mocked, had erased an empire in a single strike. But Captain Grant did not celebrate. As he stood on his bridge, staring at the emptiness where a planet had once been, he knew. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. They had not just survived. They had become the greatest power the stars had ever known. But power came at a price. And soon, the rest of the universe would come knocking. The legend of the Iron Fang. The silence was deafening. Where the Zarnethi homeworld had once stood, now there was nothing. Just a field of cosmic dust drifting in the void. The Iron Fang floated alone above the remnants of an empire, its hull battered but victorious. On the bridge, Captain Elias Grant stared at the empty space where Zurich Prime had been. His fingers were clenched into a fist. One shot, one final blast, and a civilization was gone. The weight of victory. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes was the first to speak. Her voice was hollow. "It's over, sir." The crew was silent, watching their captain, waiting for his reaction. Grant's gaze didn't leave the viewport. "Is it?" he muttered. They had won the war. The Zarnethi Dominion. The empire that had terrorized countless civilizations was no more. No fleet remained to challenge humanity. No warlords to rally their forces. The Iron Fang had erased their legacy in an instant. But was this victory, or something else? The galaxy watches. Across the stars, news of the Zarnethi's destruction spread like wildfire. In the Galactic Council, representatives of dozens of species sat in stunned silence. Some in horror, others in awe. The Harkari ambassador finally broke the quiet. They wiped out an entire empire with one ship. A Vrathi delegate hissed. No, not just a ship. A god and planet killer. The council erupted into chaos. Some species called for humanity to be feared. Others called for them to be respected. But one thing was clear. The balance of power had changed forever. Humanity, once dismissed as a fading race, had just declared themselves the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The return to Earth. The Iron Fang slowly made its way back to Terran space. For the first time in centuries, humanity was at peace. No empire dared challenge them. No fleet moved against them. But peace felt hollow. As they approached Earth, the ship received a priority transmission from Terran High Command. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Grant, you and your crew have done the impossible." His voice was filled with pride. "The Zarnethi are gone. The war is over. Humanity stands victorious." Grant's face remained unreadable. "What now?" The Admiral's expression darkened. "Now, Captain, we must decide what to do with the Iron Fang." A heavy silence filled the bridge. Hayes shifted uneasily. "Sir, they want to decommission the ship, don't they?" The Admiral nodded. "The Iron Fang is the most powerful weapon in existence. The Council is afraid of what it represents. Some believe it should be destroyed." Grant's jaw tightened. "And what do you believe?" The Admiral met his gaze. "I believe that sometimes the most dangerous weapons are the ones we can't afford to lose. A decision that will shape the future." The crew gathered in the command chamber to discuss the ship's fate. "We can't let them shut her down," Hayes said firmly. "This ship saved humanity. It could protect us from whatever comes next." Others weren't so sure. "But if we keep it, won't we become the very thing we fought against?" All eyes turned to Grant. The final decision rested with him. He looked around at his crew, at the men and women who had fought beside him, who had risked everything for this moment. Then, finally, he spoke. "The Iron Fang is more than a warship. It's a symbol. A warning." Asterisk, asterisk. He turned to the viewport, staring at the vastness of space. "We won't destroy it, but we won't let it fall into the wrong hands either." A new course was set. The Iron Fang would not be decommissioned. It would not be handed over to the Council. Instead, it would disappear into the void, waiting for the day it was needed again. A new legend is born. Years passed. The Iron Fang became a myth. Some said it had been destroyed, erased to prevent another war. Others whispered that it still roamed the edges of space, watching, waiting for the next great threat. No one knew for certain. But deep in the darkness of the cosmos, a lone warship drifted, its hull covered in the scars of battle, its weapons silent, but never forgotten. And across the galaxy, one truth remained. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the apex predators of the stars. And if war ever came again, the Iron Fang would return.